Special thanks to Robert Wayne Footwear and Doc Martin.
Hey, it's Reflex, and excited to have Kaskade. Thanks for coming through. So, 8th studio album?
8th studio, Atmosphere, coming at you September 10th.
That's exciting, right? Like this is 8's a good number. First of all, it's like my favorite number, so
it
means something. Yeah.
You turn it sideways, like eternal or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, 8's a good number. I like it.
8's an accomplishment. I mean, you're not new at this. You know, I think I heard another interview. You've been DJing technically for 25 years, roughly.
A crazy amount of time.
I think I'm
yes, I've been at it.
And I'm close to 15. So, you know, I'm a bit jealous that you, coming from your origin, you kind of came up in a very authentic dance scene. Like, you've been a part of this culture for such a long time. And here's your 8th studio album. Tell me, like, about the growth into this album from the previous records. Like, how much has it changed for you, or do you still kind of do what you've always been accustomed to doing?
Look, I mean, every album I'm always trying to challenge myself. Like,
Sure.
okay, what can I do different? What am I going to bring to the table? What's it going to sound like? When I sit down before I start it, I'm having these discussions with myself, right?
Sure.
I think on this album, the big difference is I wrote it right after coming off of tour. I finished the Freaks of Nature tour, which is like this exhausting 50-plus city tour.
Sure.
Ended here on the West Coast. Well, the last show I did in LA was at Staples Center, massive. You know, so the tour was real high intensity. It was just, it sucked the life out of me. I mean, when I got home, I was exhausted. I was like, okay, cool, time to write a record. And that was the mindset that I started this album with. So it's a lot more introspective, a little bit quieter, more deep. And I think it's appropriate. I'm singing on the first single. It's a very personal record. But that was one of the things, like, oh man, what can I do to continue to keep this fresh? I'm always trying to think of ways to you know, make sure it's fun for me.
Sure, and you've produced various types of records, obviously, multi-genre, and, you know, but I always feel like Kaskade is kind of like, you know, across the time of the last, 15 years of production or so, and through these 8 albums, you've kind of always just done your thing, and I've seen these, like, ups and downs for different scenes, if you will, within dance and stuff.
Yeah.
How does one yourself kind of just maintain the position of just doing what you do and kind of keeping your eyes on the prize for what you do sonically? Because obviously people kind of chase fads and things kind of happen.
Man.
Do you pay attention to it, or does Kaskade just go, that's cool, but I'm gonna go?
Nah, listen, I'm very inspired by what's happening in the underground. I live in a nightclub. I'm on the road. 300 days of the year. I have freaking how many shows a year, I don't even know. And I grew up going to nightclubs, and that's how I got into this music. But so I pay attention, and it's funny, sometimes I can see something coming and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a blip, or maybe this style lasts for a long time. You never really know.
Sure.
But I think the stuff that's authentic and that's cool, I'm for sure absorbing that. I mean, like when Skrillex first came on the scene, I was like, this is blowing my mind. This sounds like nothing I've ever heard before. It was really interesting that first time you hear it, you're like, wait, what is this?
Right.
What tempo is this at? Like, is it hip hop tempo? Like, it really messed with my head. But I was inspired by what he was doing. And same with guys like Deadmau5. These guys come along and they're doing something new. And I think as an artist, I absorb that and put my own take on it. I think to be authentic and really be true to yourself instead of chasing, producer, I was like, what do I do, man? I can't, how do I break through? And I'm like, stop chasing a certain sound and figure out what your sound is. You can be inspired by what people are doing and have bits and pieces of that in your production, and that's certainly the case with me, but you got to find your own style within that. I mean, people are always like, how do you remain relevant for this length of time? And I think for me, it's just not, you can't completely close the doors and be like, okay, I'm going to just exist in this little room. I can't do that. I mean, I'm out in the club so much, but it's about absorbing it and making it your own.
Making it your own, sure. Yeah. I was thinking about how, you grew up in the Illinois area, Illinois State rather, and then you spent time in San Francisco. Now I feel like there's this like proud, and tell me if I'm wrong, this proud moment where like you're really putting it on for like the U.S. and not that there's this like DJ Olympics globally and stuff, but like I read I think an article
there should be
possibly, but no, because you see these new generations of DJs and producers and fans even, and in the last few years you've seen like the overindulgence of like if it's from a certain area of the world it's cool, or these fads happening, and with what's happening in Vegas and what's happening in music and dance music here in the United States, and specifically what happened in the 90s in Chicago's and Detroit's and even the New York underground, and even Los Angeles for that matter.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like that's happening again right now in the United States.
Dude, it's happening, and it's been happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been screaming this at the top of my lungs for a decade. When I first started getting booked out of the country, I'd go to these parties and they'd be amazing. I'd be like, wow, Abiz is amazing. My gosh, the scene's crazy here.
Right.
But then I'd come back home and I'd play a show in LA and I'd be like, but yeah, you can't mess with this. Like,
right.
I mean, we've always had something really cool going on here. But I think we've had like kind of that little brother, complex going on, like, oh man, but it's got to be cooler in Europe, right? Like, no, it's on the radio over there. They get it. It's like, nah, man, I think we really get it.
Yeah.
And now we've reinvented what's happening in the scene, and the energy is all here. I mean, from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. I mean, this is LA, the West Coast, California specifically, has the largest underground movement in the world right now, and no one would argue that. I mean, you get Tiesto in here, or whoever, I don't care, the Dutch guys, the Swedish guys, they're going to recognize that this is what's happening right now is based here.
And most of them are moving here.
I mean, they're all living here now. I mean, it's like from Daft Punk to Tiesto to whoever. I mean, they all live here now because I think they feel like it's important to be close to where the center of it's going.
Sure.
This is the epicenter now. So.
Sure. And then, outside of these, this tour that you're about to do for Atmosphere, and the large tour you just came off of, you did this residency in Vegas, which was you had, I don't think you'd been there so often, so frequently in previous years. This is your first time?
Up to now, it was just once a month.
Yeah.
Up till this season. And then when last year ended, at the end of the year, I'm like, man, I want to do something different. I want to do it during the summer season from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And I came up with this idea, Summer Lovin'. I'll play Saturday night and then Sunday afternoon at the pool. And I mean, here I am at the end of the summer, and I'm like, I'm dying, I'm sad, because it's when you do something week in and week out, the party has a life of its own. There's a vibe that has been created there, and it's just awesome. I'm sad to see it come to an end. Labor Day is coming up; it's right around the corner, and that's the final one. And I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, it wasn't it like Vegas for a while had this like stigma, or people would personify it as being like a played out or kind of like a corny place for dance music and stuff.
Sure.
And it's really changed the last few years, and I think you've been obviously a leader in that, and you've experienced it yourself, right? Could you speak a little on how that felt?
Yeah, I think, ages ago it was so top 40 and mainstream, and you go into these clubs, you're like, man, this isn't anything like what I'd go out and see in LA or San Francisco, New York, whatever. This doesn't represent the underground. But I think back then the clubs were catering to some kid from Ohio, or the parents coming out from St. Louis that wanted to experience a nightclub in Vegas. Now they realize what's happening with the youth and where people want to spend their time, and they want to hear electronic music, and they want to be part of this humongous movement. And they're booking A+ talent at all these venues now, and the venues are incredible, and it's very authentic. I mean, I think it mirrors the scene. Obviously, there's a Vegas element there with tables and kind of like
the clients,
their thing.
They still have to pay the DJ's fees and cover that.
Of course, there's an element of that there. It is Vegas.
Yeah.
People dress up when they go out and whatnot, and so it's not like a full blown rave or anything, but it is still very authentic, and the music that's being played there is amazing. I spoke to Richie Hott, and he's an underground techno guy, and he's like, man, what's it going to be like when I play there? This is last year, and I'm like, dude, just do your thing. You don't have to pander. Don't worry about what people have told you. Do your thing. Your fans will show up. I saw him 2 days later, and he's like, it was the most amazing gig ever. It was unbelievable. He's never what I thought Vegas would be like. And I'm like, that's the deal. Don't have this, people that are showing up now, they're realizing, like, I can do what I want. The scene's grown, and it's become sophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, I remember, some of my friends, whether it was DJ AM and different people like Jazzy Jeff, got kicked off their turntables at one point. And that really started this whole, like, shit, like, you got to play for, like, these bottle service people that are requesting this terrible record, and you don't get to really perform. But I think that's really evolved, and I think people like yourself are leading that way of just putting on a show and people stepping back going, you guys know what you're doing with the music. How about we just step back and you do you, and we'll just we'll run our business.
This dude's the captain for the night. I'm just the passenger. I mean, there's always going to be that element, But that exists everywhere.
Sure.
I mean, you can go out in New York and some schmo, bottle service schmo, could make something to ruin the night.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's gonna be, it's gonna happen anywhere, and that certainly is the case in Vegas.
Sure.
But I think my point has been that it's become more authentic, and what's happening there is really groundbreaking, and it's interesting, and it's exciting, and it's cool to be a part of.
Sure. On the production tip, something about you that I always admired was you, really early in your career, you really evolved and found the importance of like a top line and an actual song and melody and actual lyric that people could gravitate to. Stuff. What made you at that point, at a fairly earlier stage in your career, what was the turning point for you to say, like, this is what I should be doing, making songs, coming up with the lyrics? Because it seems like even outside of music, you have like a really cool perception or perceptive view of the world, and just like, because you traveled, even before you were really traveling as a DJ, you got to travel and experience a lot of the world of it.
For me, the moment was moving from Chicago. I grew up a kid in the suburbs of Chicago, and I was experiencing that scene. And back then it was like DJ Sneak, Derek Carter. It was very like this boomty kind of disco re-edit. Very cool. Still, that sound to me is still like, I put it on and I'm just like, yes.
Right.
Like any time of day, it's like, cares go away, world go away. I put one of those mixtapes on.
Yeah.
I love that sound. But when I moved to San Francisco in 2000, I noticed a change in what was going on, and San Francisco was kind of a leader, this whole deep house movement. It was very like Sade-esque, but new sounding, like, whoa, it's still 4 on the floor, it's funky, but the song's important. And there were a lot of cool groups, Solstice, Sneaker Pimps was doing some down-tempo stuff, Portishead was kind of breaking through at that moment. And for me, I think it was the light really went on, and I said, if I want to become unique and really have my own voice in this world, I can't just be like sampling disco records and programming drums. I need to focus on songwriting.
Congratulations, 8th studio album, Atmosphere. Please pick it up. And the record's amazing. He's singing on it. It's awesome. Kaskade, Reflex. Thanks for checking
it out.
Yeah.